My ex-girlfriend tried to frame me as a deadbeat dad. So I exposed her scheme and got legal revenge. I'm 32 male, and I've always been careful about the relationships I get into. Maybe it's because I've seen too many friends get burned, messy breakups, custody battles, you name it. But no matter how cautious you think you are, sometimes life throws you a curveball you never see coming. This all started about a year after I broke up with my ex-girlfriend. Well, call Nancy, and I dated for about 2 years. And while things were good in the beginning, it didn't take long for cracks to show. She was charming, sure, but she had this entitled streak that would come out in the worst ways. Whether it was expecting me to cover all the bills or guilt-tripping me if I didn't jump to meet her every demand, she made it clear that she thought the world owed her something. And by extension, so did I. When the relationship ended, I felt relieved. There wasn't any dramatic blowout. We just grew apart, and I realized I was better off without her constant games. We went our separate ways, or so I thought. For months, I didn't hear from her at all. Then, out of nowhere, I got a text. "Hey, can we talk? It's important." I hesitated before responding. What could she possibly want now? But curiosity got the better of me, so I replied. She asked if we could meet up, saying it was too sensitive to discuss over the phone. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a coffee shop. She looked nervous, which wasn't like her at all. He was the type who thrived on control, always the most confident person in the room. Seeing her fidget made me uneasy. After some small talk, she finally got to the point. "So, I'm pregnant," she said, not meeting my eyes. I blinked, unsure of what to say. Congratulations?" She bit her lip. "It's yours." My heart stopped for a second. "Excuse me?" "It's yours," she repeated, her tone firmer this time. "I know we broke up a while ago, but it happened just before we ended things. I didn't realize it until after." I stared at her, trying to process what she'd just said. "You're telling me you're pregnant with my child, and you've waited this long to tell me?" She shrugged, as if this was no big deal. I wasn't sure how to bring it up, but now that the baby's almost here, I need your support. Something about her story didn't sit right with me. Sure, we'd been intimate toward the end of our relationship, but the timeline fell off. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. "Have you seen a doctor? Do you have a due date?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She gave me the date, and that's when alarm bells started ringing. The math didn't add up. Based on what she was saying, she would have gotten pregnant after we broke up, not before. "Nancy, are you sure about this?" I asked cautiously, because the timing doesn't make sense. She bristled. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I'm saying it doesn't add up," I said firmly. "If this is my child, I'll take responsibility. But I'm going to need proof." That's when her true colors started to show. Nancy's face darkened when I mentioned proof. "Are you seriously questioning me?" She snapped. "Do you think I'd lie about something like this?" I didn't flinch. "I'm not accusing you of lying, Nancy. I'm saying I need to be certain. A paternity test can clear this up." Her reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of agreeing, she exploded. "Wow, I come to you for help, and this is how you treat me? Like I'm some gold digger trying to trap you? You've always been paranoid, but this is a new low." The way she twisted the narrative irritated me, but I kept my composure. "If you're so sure it's mine, you shouldn't have a problem proving it," I said. "It's standard in situations like this." Nancy stormed out of the coffee shop, muttering about how I was heartless and selfish. I thought that might be the end of it, but I was wrong. Very wrong. About a week later, I got served with legal papers. Nancy had filed a claim for child support before the baby was even born. I was floored. Not only had she bypassed the simple request for a paternity test, but she'd gone straight to legal action, dragging me into a battle I hadn't signed up for. I called a lawyer the next day. After explaining the situation, my lawyer was as skeptical as I was. "If the timeline doesn't add up, this could be a scare tactic," she said. "But we'll need to approach this carefully. First, we'll request a court-ordered paternity test once the baby is born. Until then, don't agree to anything." That was easier said than done. Nancy ramped up her efforts, messaging me constantly with guilt-laden texts. I can't believe you're doing this to me. Do you know how stressful this is while I'm pregnant? You were so quick to leave, but now you're trying to deny your own child? Disgusting. You're going to regret this when everyone finds out what kind of man you are. It wasn't just texts either. She started bad-mouthing me to mutual friends, painting me as a deadbeat who was trying to shirk his responsibilities. A few people reached out saying things like, "Hey man, what's going on? Did you really abandon Nancy when she's pregnant?" It was infuriating, but I stuck to my plan. The truth will come out, I told them. I'm not going to pay for a child that isn't mine, and I'm not going to let her manipulate me. The baby was born about 2 months later. As soon as I got the news, my lawyer filed a motion for a paternity test. She tried to delay, claiming she was too overwhelmed to deal with the process, but the court wasn't having it. A few weeks later, the results came in. I wasn't the father. When my lawyer called to tell me, I felt a mix of relief and anger. Relief because I knew the truth, but anger because he had dragged me through hell for nothing. The baby's DNA didn't match mine at all. It wasn't even close. I thought he would finally back down after the test, but she doubled down instead. She claimed the lab had made a mistake and demanded a second test. The court allowed it, and unsurprisingly, the results were the same. Not the father. At this point, my lawyer advised me to take additional legal action to protect myself. She's showing a pattern of malicious behavior, she said. We can countersue for fraud and damages if she continues. I wasn't sure I wanted to escalate things, but she left me no choice. Instead of accepting the results, she started spreading even more lies. She told people I had somehow tampered with the test, bribing the lab to falsify the results. It was absurd, but some people believed her. Nancy's lies didn't stop, and neither did her attempts to milk the situation for all it was worth. She started showing up at places she knew I frequented, coffee shops, the gym, even outside my office, making a scene every time. "You're abandoning your own child," she'd yell loudly, ensuring everyone with an earshot turned to stare. "You're a liar and a coward." At first, I tried to ignore her. I figured people would see through her theatrics. But it quickly became clear that she was trying to provoke me into reacting, probably so she could use it against me later. I refused to give her that satisfaction, but the situation was escalating fast. My lawyer filed for a restraining order, citing harassment and emotional distress. We submitted evidence of her public outbursts, text messages, and the false claims she'd made to mutual friends. The court granted a temporary restraining order, barring her from coming within 200 feet of me or my workplace. Finally, I had some breathing room, but he wasn't done yet. She filed an appeal, claiming the restraining order was an attempt to silence her. In the courtroom, she put on quite the performance, crying and accusing me of being a deadbeat dad who was ruining her life. My lawyer, thankfully, dismantled her argument with ease. "Your Honor, the paternity tests have definitively proven that my client is not the father of this child. This case is no longer about support. It's about harassment and defamation." The judge turned to Nancy, Ms. Nancy's last name. "Do you have any evidence to support your claims?" She stammered, repeating the same baseless accusations about tampered tests. The judge wasn't impressed. "Ms. Nancy's last name, you've wasted this court's time with false allegations. The paternity results are clear. This man is not the father of your child. I'm upholding the restraining order, and I strongly advise you to stop any further harassment. If you continue, you may face additional legal consequences." Nancy's face turned red, but she didn't say another word. For once, she'd run out of excuses. You'd think that would have been the end of it, but she wasn't ready to let go. A few weeks later, I found out she'd posted a rant about me on social media, complete with fake screenshots of conversations that made it look like I'd admitted to being the father. She was relentless. This time, I decided to take the offensive. My lawyer filed a defamation lawsuit, citing the damage her lies had caused to my reputation. We presented the fake screenshots as evidence, along with affidavits from mutual friends who had seen her orchestrate this entire scheme. When the case finally went to court, Nancy crumbled under the pressure. Faced with overwhelming evidence, she admitted to fabricating the screenshots and spreading false claims. The judge ordered her to pay damages and issued a stern warning. If you continue to harass this man, you will face criminal charges. By the end of it all, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, of course, but also disbelief at how far he had gone to try and manipulate me. The sheer entitlement, the belief that she could lie, cheat, and harass her way into my life was staggering. But I also felt a sense of closure. Her scheme had fallen apart, and the truth was finally out. After the dust settled, I took some time to reflect on everything that had happened. The entire ordeal was exhausting, emotionally, mentally, and financially, but it taught me some hard lessons about trust and boundaries. Nancy's behavior wasn't just a one-off. It was the culmination of patterns I'd overlooked during our relationship. Her entitlement, her need for control, and her refusal to take accountability were all red flags I'd ignored at the time. Now, I was done ignoring them. The defamation lawsuit marked the final chapter of this nightmare. The court awarded me damages, and while the amount wasn't life-changing, it was enough to send a clear message. People like Nancy couldn't manipulate the system and walk away unscathed. She was forced to issue a public retraction on her social media accounts, where she admitted to fabricating evidence and making false accusations. Once that was done, I cut all remaining ties. I blocked her on every platform, moved to a different apartment, and made sure she had no way of contacting me. The restraining order remained in place, giving me peace of mind that she wouldn't show up unannounced again. Looking back, the most surprising part of this whole ordeal was the support I received from friends and family. At first, I'd worried that Nancy's lies would turn people against me. But the truth has a way of coming out. The people who truly knew me saw through her schemes. And those who didn't? Well, I stopped caring about their opinions. The experience left me more cautious, but also more resilient. I learned the importance of standing my ground, even when it feels like the world is against you. Nancy's attempts to manipulate me might have worked if I'd caved to her pressure early on, but refusing to budge, demanding proof, and holding her accountable was what ultimately exposed her lies. So, if you've ever dealt with someone entitled or manipulative, let this be your reminder. Stand your ground. People like that thrive on doubt and fear, but the truth is the one thing they can't escape. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them, so please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.